رحم الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والحمد لله الذي فطر خلائق بقدرته ونشر الرياح برحمته، والصلاة والسلام على الإمام القبلتين ونبي الحرمين وأفضل الثقلين وجد الحسن والحسين، الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد. وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الصادقين، والذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد، يكون الله في كتابه الكريم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ادعو إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the safety of the lovers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, wherever in the world they may be, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Hisham ibn Hakkam al-Kindi has been recognized as one of the greatest companions of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, an individual who has been described amongst their khawas, the close companions, a confidant and a person who had earned the trust of the 6th and 7th Imam. You find that Hisham was a person who was known for his sharp intellect and his even sharper tongue when it came to speech. For his own enemy, Harun al-Rashid, testifies that the tongue of Hisham is sharper than 1,000 swords. You find that Hisham was an individual who was amongst the mutaqallimun, that he was amongst the theologians, that he would debate with other people because he was also a polemicist. He would engage in religious debates. That Hisham, he would engage in debates about what? For example, Hisham, he would debate about theology. He would debate about the status of prophethood. And Hisham, he would debate about the issue of imamat and wilayat. Because in that time period, when new schools of thought were arising in the time period of the 6th Imam, there were groups such as the Ash'arites who had their theological views. There was groups such as the Mu'tazila who had different theological views. There was groups such as the Waqafiyah that believed the 7th Imam was the Mahdi and he went into Ghaiba. There were groups such as the Kaysaniyah that believed Muhammad al-Hanafiya was the Imam, the last Imam, and he went into occultation. It is within this time period that Hisham, he spread the message of the truth of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And when you find the historians, when you look within the records, you find that the historians mention that the first companion of Ahlul Bayt to begin openly debating the issue of imamat and wilayat of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam with other schools of thought was Hisham ibn Hakkam al-Kindi. That this was this Hisham. But you find this Hisham despite being this close confidant of Ahlul Bayt, he was put in the limelight at a very young age, making him a great example for today's society. Because Hisham, he would be able to subdue his opponents, not with a gun, not with weapons, but with the power of his intellect, with the power of his pen. And in today's world, you find that our battles aren't with violence, our battles are with academia, our battles are with literature, our battles are with logic and rationality within today's society. So you find at one level, his biography is relevant on this aspect because we'll learn how to truly propagate the message of Imam Hussein. But at the second aspect, you find that the narrations mention that the Imam as-Sadiq, salamullahi alayh, that Imam as-Sadiq had an immense respect for Hisham ibn al-Hakkam despite the fact that he was in his youth. And when you analyze these narrations, you find that some of the narrations say that when this Hisham would come, there would be a smile on the face of Imam as-Sadiq, highlighting the position of the youth in Islamic thought. But mind you, Hisham is not an individual who is respected in all circles. When you look within the non-Shia literature, many individuals such as Ibn Hajar al-Makki, who was famous for his book Sawa'iq al-Muhriqa, which was against Shia theology, he writes that Hisham is the source of the heresy of the Shia, that Hisham is the source of the disbelief of the Shia, that Hisham, he learned these thoughts from an atheist named Abu Shakir, and he began to spread these thoughts. Although these claims are false, what they go to show is that Hisham had a key role in spreading the message of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And even when you look within our works, you find within our work certain narrations have come in that don't give Hisham a very high position. But when you look at our grand scholars, you look at Ayatollah al-Khuwi, who was famous for his works on Ilm al-Rijal. You look at Sharif al-Murtada, who was the brother of Sayyid al-Radi, the compiler Nahjul Balagha. They refute these claims and they say that either these claims and narrations were in taqiyya, that in the way you find that when Khidr and Musa were going together, Khidr, he makes a hole within the boat. Why did he do that? He did it because there was a king who was usurping those boats. And if the boat was defective, he wouldn't have taken that boat. In the same way, these narrations, they came in to save the life of Hisham ibn al-Hakkam. And that is why on this night, I've decided to analyze the biography of Hisham ibn al-Hakkam al-Kindi and have a glimpse and an insight into the life of a great companion, which many few people, they know about his life, but he has a very practical application within today's society. And this discussion will have a number of stages and parts. Is that number one, what is the position of the youth in Islamic thought? And how did Hisham earn so much respect from the sixth Imam despite his young age? Number two, why were there accusations leveled against Hisham? And what can we learn from these accusations? Number three, what were some of the debates of Hisham? And what does it show about his mannerisms of speaking? And number four, what was that debate that led to the death of Hisham ibn al-Hakkam? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When one analyzes the position of the youth within Islamic thought, you find that this time period of youth is one where there is much change going on within the heart of a human being. It's a time period of finding identity. It is a time period of finding what you want to do within the future. And this is why it is extremely important the environment you are in. For Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says in Nahjul Balagha, he speaks to his son Imam al-Hasan. Although he's speaking to his son Imam al-Hasan, sometimes the message is for someone else. That, for example, if you are angry with an individual and you can't say anything to them directly, you may speak to somebody else, but the message is for someone else. The same way in Nahjul Balagha, you find that Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says that the heart of a youth is like an uncultivated piece of land. Whatever you throw on it, it begins to accept. That whatever you throw upon that heart, it begins to accept that. And that's why when you're creating an environment environment within the home. Create an environment where there is so much learning that they enjoy coming home, so it is better than the ulterior. So it is better than the other option. Because if you tell your child to go read a book, this isn't always effective. But if you create an environment in the house where they want to come to the house, you find that this is something which will be effective. And the beauty of the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam is this, is that we have been given 14 personalities who had different circumstances, but we can relate towards their circumstances if we look and we study their lives. For example, you find that one Imam is As-Sadiq, another is Ar-Rida, another is Al-Qazim. You find the question comes up, was Imam As-Sadiq not Ar-Rida? Was he not the content one also? Was he not Al-Jawad also? The answer is that it's not that there is a differentiation between them, but rather the circumstances within their lives allowed a certain characteristic of theirs to shine over other characteristics. And that is why when you analyze their life, you'll begin to pull and derive lessons from that. And one of these Imams, his life was spent in his childhood to his youth. You find that who? Our ninth Imam, Imam Muhammad al-Jawad, salamullahi alayhi. You find that Imam Muhammad al-Jawad becomes an Imam at the age of 8. He gets poisoned at the age of 25. That 8 to 25, his entire life is spent as an Imam within this time period. And you know who this Muhammad al-Jawad was? All of those Sayyids, all those Sa'adat who are Rizvi or Radavi in the Arab countries, or Razavi in the Persian countries, all of them are also from the lineage of Imam Muhammad al-Jawad, because Imam Ali al-Rida, he only had one son. And his father would say about Imam Muhammad al-Jawad that Muhammad al-Jawad is the biggest blessing for the Shia of Ali Muhammad. That's a powerful statement, that Muhammad al-Jawad is the biggest blessing for the Shia of Ali Muhammad. These Shia who have Ali ibn Abi Talib, these Shia who have Imam al-Husayn. So the question arises within the mind that why is Imam Muhammad al-Jawad the greatest blessing? It is because for the first time that at such a young age, an individual became an imam. Now everybody began to realize that this imamate was not just a normal position, that this was a God-given position. That when people, they would come ask questions to Imam al-Jawad, who is still in his childhood. Those who are young, they can relate to this imam. Everyone can. But those who are particularly young, that match those circumstances in your life and derive those lessons, that you find that people would ask questions from all over the world, from Fajr to midday. He would take a break at midday for prayer, and then he would go towards Maghrib time. You know, they said to this Imam Muhammad al-Jawad, you're answering all these questions. Are you also going to say Saluni, Saluni, like your grandfather would say? Imam al-Jawad replies by saying that the right to say Saluni only belongs to my grandfather Ali ibn Abi Talib, but I'll answer your questions, but I won't say that line. And you find that this Imam Muhammad al-Jawad, despite his young age, despite being young, you find that he had interactions with the Khalifa of his time that show how much change he was creating. For example, you find that one day there was children, they're playing within the middle of the street. Al-Ma'mun, he is coming with his soldiers. All of those children, they began to run away. Ma'mun, he notices that there is one child, that he doesn't run away. That when you look at this child, you can tell that he is from the lineage of somebody who is Haidar-e-Karrar, somebody who was brave, who was Ghair-e-Farrar, that he wouldn't run away. You find that Ma'mun, he goes up to Muhammad al-Jawad. He says to him, oh young man, all of these other children, they ran away. Why didn't you run away? Imam Muhammad al-Jawad, in his childhood, he looks at Ma'mun, he says, number one, the street is wide enough that if you wanted to go around me, you could go around me. Number two, I didn't do anything wrong, so why would I run away? And number three, that I am from the lineage of Rasulullah, or are you the type of person to harm somebody from the lineage of Rasulullah as well? that when you look, you find that Ma'mun was the killer of the father of Imam al-Jawad. And you know what happened one day? You find that Ma'mun, he used to go hunting, because there's a long discussion within the books of theology that the killer of a prophet or an OCR, a successor of a prophet, Jannat becomes haram upon them. You find when you look with many of the killers of Imam al-Hussein that they had discomfort within their life after the death of Imam al-Hussein. In the same way, Ma'mun, after he kills Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Rida, he had discomfort, he was uncomfortable. So what would he do? You find that he would go hunting. That one day he goes hunting, he had this hawk. His hawk, it comes back with a fish in its beak. Ma'mun, he's wondering that there is no body of water over here. How did this hawk, it come with a piece of fish, it came with a fish in its mouth. You find that this Ma'mun, he's on the way back from hunting, he's thinking about this. Then he sees Imam Muhammad al-Jawad. He sees Imam Muhammad al-Jawad, and there are some sheep around Imam Muhammad al-Jawad. He is saying, usjud lillah to those animals. Prostrate towards Allah. Ma'mun, he says, oh Muhammad al-Jawad, are you playing with animals? He replies with a verse from the Quran that Allah has not created us to play upon this earth. Then he says, what are you doing? He says, making animals prostrate is what we would do in our childhood. Ma'mun, he says to him, that do you also pray? You're just a child. He replies, yes, I pray. Because the moment you have the intellect to realize that you should pray, then prayers become mandatory upon you. Because you know, what is Imam Muhammad al-Jawad trying to show? He's trying to show that I am just a child, but I am a ma'soom, infallible imam. That he was trying to show the knowledge of his imamat. But you know what he says after that? He says to Ma'mun, he says that whenever I see my mother light a fire, she places small pieces of wood within the fire to have a large piece of wood catch fire. I don't want to be one of those small pieces of wood which will be used on the day of judgment when the fire of hell is there, when a big piece of wood like you is thrown within that. And then you know what he says after that? Ma'mun, he takes out that fish. He says, oh Muhammad al-Jawad, tell me what is in my hand. Like you know how you play with children, that tell me what's in my hand. He says, tell me what's in my hand. Imam Muhammad al-Jawad, he replies by saying that kings, they go hunting. When they go hunting, they send their hawks. When they send their hawks, they fly between the heavens and the earth. When those hawks, they fly between the heavens and the earth, there are fish which come out of the water and in the water and out of the water. When those fish come out and the hawks, they see those fish, they catch those fish within their beak. Then those hawks, they bring that fish to the Khalifa. The Khalifa, he places that fish within his hands. Then he tests the lineage of Rasulullah by asking him what's in his hand. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He tests that what is in his hands. And this is why you find that if you attain attachment to these Ahlul Bayt, that you'll begin to develop yourself. And this is what Hisham ibn al-Hakkam did. That Hisham ibn al-Hakkam, he was not always a Shia, a follower of Imam al-Sadiq. That he would follow a Mu'tazilite scholar who had different theological beliefs from the Shia. You find that it was a young Hisham, that his uncle introduces him to Imam al-Sadiq. When his uncle introduces him to Imam al-Sadiq, the uncle goes in first to the sixth Imam. He says, listen, my nephew, he has a very sharp tongue. His tongue is very sharp. If he says something, then please forgive me. Imam al-Sadiq, he replies by saying that do you not trust us when we come and speak towards people? You find that this Hisham, he has one meeting with Imam al-Sadiq. Within that first meeting, the Imam answers his questions, but he asks some questions to Hisham. Hisham, he's thinking about these questions. He says, okay, give me a few more days. They have a second meeting. Second meeting, the Imam, he asks questions. Hisham says, give me a few more days. It is at that third meeting where Imam al-Sadiq says, he asks him questions. He said, listen, next time we meet, we are going to meet in an area called Hira. When he comes to the area of Hira, he sees Imam as-Sadiq coming on his ride. When he sees Imam as-Sadiq, he says that I saw the grandeur on his face to such an extent that I could not help but become his follower. You find the scholars, they write that Imam as-Sadiq answered 5,000 questions for Hisham in those meetings. That 5,000 questions. But you know what this goes to highlight? The fact that Hisham, although he was in his youth, he was still trying to make intellectual progress and discussion. Because within this time period, that it's not only to be important to be educated in the field of because Hisham, he had a business on the side. That Hisham, he would sell this cloth which was from an area of Persia. He was selling that cloth, and by the shade in the darkness, Imam al-Qadim, he walks by Hisham. He says, oh Hisham, why are you selling this cloth within the darkness? Because to cheat someone is a wrong, oh Hisham. That Imam al-Qadim, he was teaching Hisham a lesson over there. But what this goes to highlight is that Hisham, he had an academic background, but at the same time, Hisham, he would go to the ends of the earth to learn because this is a time period where you need answers. That Hisham, he became a devoted follower of Imam as-Sadiq, and he would learn from that university which was like no other university upon this earth. Because when you look at today's universities, right, you go on the faculty page of the website, even when you go within one department, for example, political science, there will be different professors in one department because everyone has different specialities. Some people will specialize in business law, you'll have immigration law, you'll have international law, so forth. And it is thousands of people that come together and they form one faculty. But there was a university in Medina. One man would sit on the mimbar. 4,000 students would learn from him in just Kufa, in one area. And there would be other students in other cities, and he would teach them everything from Islamic law to philosophy to theology to mathematics to the sciences. That this was Imam as-Sadiq. And you find that this university was one which was related to Rasulullah. You know, they asked the Imam's father, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, salamullahi alayhi. Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, he says, Qala Rasulullah, because you know the recording of hadith was banned for a time period. He says, I heard Rasulullah say, they say, hold up, you never saw Rasulullah. What is your chain of narrators? Who did you hear this from? Imam Muhammad al-Baqir said, I'll tell you my chain of narrators this one time, but after this I won't tell you again. Whatever I hear is from my father Zainul Abidin. Whatever he hears is from his father Imam al-Husain. Whatever he hears is either from his brother Imam Hassan or from his father Amir al-Mu'mineen, and whatever he hears is from Rasulullah. And Rasulullah would not speak until revelation would come from Allah. وَمَا يَنْتَكُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ, as the Quran says, that he doesn't speak from his desires, but what he speaks is of the revelation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you find it is at this university that Hisham ibn al-Hakkam, it is at this door of Ahlul Bayt, that Hisham ibn al-Hakkam, he rose through the fields of prominence. That you know, Imam as-Sadiq, some of the companions of Imam as-Sadiq were amongst the greatest of companions. That when you look at the works of Rijal, which is the science of narrators, there is this group of 18 companions called the Ashab al-Ijma'. The Ashab al-Ijma are a group of 18 companions that no narrator or scholar of the hadith have said that these people are irreliable. You find that some of these Ashab al-Ijma, they were around Imam as-Sadiq. Hisham, he comes up. The narration says that Hisham was just a teenager. His beard had not even come out. You know what the Imam does when Hisham ibn al-Hakkam comes? The Imam, he stands up for Hisham ibn al-Hakkam. He brings Hisham near him and he places him down. Then never think you're too young to earn a position of respect, because position is not based upon age, it is based upon your abilities. That what was the argument they made against Amir al-Mu'mineen? They said that he is too young to become the Khalifa. But if they realized that who this Ali was, they would find that this Ali could answer the problems until the day of judgment. But you find that this Hisham, he comes up, the Imam stands up, he brings Hisham closer to him. You find what happens. They begin to say, "Oh Imam as-Sadiq, this is just a child, he is a young man. Why are you standing up for him out of respect?" And you know what the Imam replies by saying, "Hada nasiruna biqalbihi wa lisanihi wa yadayh." That this individual, he is our helper with his heart, with his tongue, and with his actions. That the Imam, he realized that when you support their cause, the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, they will honor you in ways which you can never imagine. That this is who these individuals are. But you find that logically, that when an individual like Hisham, he is going through these stages, that he has this status, there will be individuals who will have jealousy of Hisham. Then you know Hisham was in his youth, that what did Hisham do? You find number one, Hisham, he found his way. He found his way that what he wanted to do in life. Hisham, he educated himself academically. Hisham, he educated himself theologically. But this same Hisham, despite doing all that, there were people who had jealousy of Hisham. Why? Because you find Hisham, he would debate with many of the extremist sects of the Shia within that time period. For example, within that time period, there were the Waqafiyya, as I just mentioned. There were the Ghalis, the Ghullat, the extremists who said that Ahlul Bayt themselves were lords. Had they only pondered that these individuals, that if they showed these miracles as gods, as lords, it would take away from their position. That what big deal is it for a lord to do what they did? But being the servants of Allah and to have that status, that is in reality something which transcends them above others. And you find that these individuals, they began to ascribe false claims against Hisham. For example, what were these false claims? Some of them said that Hisham, he believed in tajseem. He believed in what? He believed in anthropomorphy. That he believed God had a body and that God was as tall as 7 people. That 7 people, you stack them high, that was God. That's what they ascribed against Hisham. At the second level, they said that Hisham, he believes that God does not have knowledge of something until that thing comes into being. They ascribed another claim against Hisham. They said Hisham, he doesn't believe in the justice of Allah. They said that what? They said that Hisham, he believes in predestination only. You know, we of the school of Ahlul Bayt, we believe that it's not complete free will, nor is it complete predestination. Because if it was complete predestination, then why is Allah putting us through trial? That's why Bahlul, one day, he throws a brick at the head of Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa used to believe in complete predestination. Abu Hanifa says, Bahlul, why did you do that? Apprehend him immediately, he says to someone. Bahlul says, oh Abu Hanifa, you believe in predestination. I didn't do that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made me do that. Blame Allah. So you find these claims such as this, which are nonsensical, they were leveled against Hisham. But how do you refute them? Number one, you find the fact that any intellectual individual, they wouldn't believe this. That if you tell a child to believe that God is 7 human beings tall, a child wouldn't believe that. But an intellectual of Ali Muhammad who is drinking from that ocean of knowledge, he's ready to believe that. At the second level, what do you find? The fact that the Imams, they made a dua for Hisham. Because the dua of an infallible, it is never rejected. The dua of a ma'soom, it is never rejected. You find that Imam as-Sadiq would say, oh Hisham, as long as you are serving our cause, you will receive divine assistance. And that's why Hisham ibn al-Hakkam states that as long as I kept debating those who opposed Ali Muhammad, never in my life did I lose a debate. That never in my life did I lose a debate. And Imam as-Sadiq, when Imam al-Rida was asked about Hisham ibn al-Hakkam, somebody asked, that is Hisham a person of respect? There are different views upon him. Imam al-Rida said that Hisham, whoever is an enemy of Hisham is our enemy, and whoever is a friend of Hisham is our friend. And he says, tell my Shia, my followers, that Hisham was from amongst the honorable of our followers. That this is who Hisham was. But the question comes up, is that what qualities did Hisham have that made him amongst the honorable of the followers of Ahlul Bayt? Because he had this knowledge, this ilm which transcended him. Because when you look at the life, it's an interesting topic on its own. Inshallah, it's worthy of a whole ashra, that what was the status of the servants of Ahlul Bayt. That even if you look at somebody like Janab Fidda, Bibi Fidda, what do you see? You find that for 20 years she spoke nothing but Quran. 20 years she spoke nothing but Quran. A man by the name of Abdullah al-Mubarak, he narrates what? He narrates that one day I was walking in the desert. And in the desert, I saw a lady, she was lost. I go up to her and I say, "Oh lady, are you lost?" She replies by saying, فَقُلْ سَلَامٌ فَسَوْفَ يَعْلَمُونَ. Say salam and soon they shall know. He begins to think to some, okay, she wants me to say salam. He says salam. And then after that, the man, he asks her that, "Are you lost?" "That's what I was asking you." You know what she replies by saying? She says, وَمَن يَهْدِ اللَّهِ فَمَا لَهُ مِن مُضِلٍّ. That the one who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides, they can never go lost. He begins to think to himself that I asked two questions. She answers both questions from the Quran. Is she a human being or is she a jinn? He asks her, "Are you a human or are you a jinn?" You know what she replies? She says, "Ya Banu Adam, khudu zinatakum inda kulli masjid." "O son of Adam, put on your adornments when you go to each masjid." He thinks, okay, she said, "Ya Banu Adam," she must be a human being. And then after that, he asks her that, "Where have you come from? Where are you? Why are you here? Where have you come from?" She replies by saying, "Ulaika yunaduna min makanin ba'id." They called from a far off place, meaning she's coming from a far off place. Then he asks her that, "Where are you going?" She says what? She says, وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ. Allah has made it incumbent upon man to go to Hajj. I'm going to Hajj. You find question after question. She keeps answering from the Quran. Then he asks her that, "Are you hungry? Do you need food?" She says, وَمَا جَعَلْنَاهُمْ جَسَدًا لَا يَأْكُلُونَ الطَّعَامَ. That we have not made them bodies that don't eat food, meaning I want food, I am hungry. After that, the man says to her what? He says that there's a caravan which is going towards Hajj over there. They were walking. She says, "Why don't you join that caravan?" She replies with the famous verse from Surah Al-Baqarah. She says what? She says, "La yuqallif Allahu nafsan illa was'aha." Allah doesn't task a soul more than it can bear. And you find even before that, before this question, he had asked her that, "How long have you been lost?" She even replied to that from the Quran. She said what? She said, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا فِي سِتَّةٍ أَيَّامٍ. Allah created the heavens and the earth and whatever is in between in 6 days, meaning I was lost for 6 days. So you find after that, after she refuses to get on the caravan, what happens? The man says, "Okay, you come on my camel, we'll ride together." She replies from the Quran again. She says what? She says, "Lo kana fihima alihatan illa Allah la fasadata." Had there been lords besides Allah, there would be fasad and corruption upon this earth. Meaning what? That if both of us ride upon this same camel, it would be fasad, it would be corruption. You're my non-mahram. Then he says to her what? She says, "Okay, I'll come down, you get on the camel, you ride, I will be next to you." She gets on the camel. She says, "Subhanalladhi sakhara lana hada wa ma kunna lahu muqrinin." He says, all praise to that Allah, immaculate, free from defects is Allah, who has made this animal, who has made this subservient to us. You find that they're going within the desert. She's on the camel, the man is on foot. They see 4 young men. He asks, "Do you know this man?" She replies with 4 verses from the Quran. She says, "Ya Dawood, inna ja'alnaka khalifatan fil ard, wa ma Muhammadan illa rasul. Ya Yahya, khudil kitab biquwa, ya Musa, inni ana Allah." Meaning what? Meaning their names are Dawood, their names are Yahya, their names are Musa, and their name is Muhammad. He asked her that, who are these people? You just mentioned their names. She replies by saying what? She says, "Al-malu wal-banun zinatul hayatid dunya." Your wealth and your children are an adornment for you upon this earth, in the life of this earth. Meaning what? Banun, that these are my children. After that, you find the children, they come up to their mother. Then she says to her children, the verses from the story of Nabi Musa when he meets the daughters of Shu'aib. He says what? She says, Ya abate istajirhu, pay him. And then when they give the money, she says what? She says, Inna Allah yudha'ifu liman yasha. Allah increases for whoever He wants. Meaning what? Give him more. This man was honorable. The man, he says, that who is this lady? Everything I asked her, she replied from the Quran. The children, they say, this is our mother Fizza, who was the servant of Fatima, the wife of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the daughter of Rasulullah. And it has been 20 years. She has spoken nothing except from the Quran. That this is the servants of Ali Muhammad, that the servants are at this status, then what status must that Ahlul Bayt be had? And you find this is why Hisham, his intellect was incredible. That oftentimes when the people would come to the Imam, you know what the Imam would say? Imam would say, debate Hisham first. If you get past Hisham, then come talk to us, but you won't get past Hisham. There was certain incidents. You find what? You find that a man, he comes to Imam as-Sadiq and he says what? He says, listen, we have some differences. The Imam as-Sadiq says, okay, that when we have these differences, what is our reference? What's our source when we talk? Is it going to be Rasulullah? The man replies by saying, half of it will be from Rasulullah, half of it will be from me. The Imam says to him, that do you receive revelation? He says, no, I don't receive revelation. Then the Imam says, so you are making yourself a partner with Rasulullah? The man, he goes silent at that point. Imam as-Sadiq says, you know what? Debate Hisham first, then come up to me. He says, what am I going to do debating with a child? Hisham, he asked this man what? He says towards him, he says, that has Allah created us with a purpose and taken care of everything, or has He left us in vain? The man, he says what? He says, Allah, of course, has taken care of everything. He says, has Allah taken care of our guidance as well? The man, he says, yes. You notice that in these discussions, it's very systematic, it's very logical, it's very rational, it's not emotional. Because if your argument is failing, don't raise your voice, raise your argument, raise your logic. You find that over here, at this point, what happens? Hisham, he asks, that has Allah created our system of guidance? The man says, yes. Then Hisham says, who is the guide? He says, Rasulullah. He says, what about after Rasulullah? The man says, it is the Quran and the Hadith, the Quran and the Sunnah. You know what Hisham says to him? That what is the purpose of a guide? He says the purpose of a guide is so there's not disputes about the matters of the religion. He said, okay, then is the Quran and the traditions enough? Hisham says to him, the man replies, yes, they are enough. They're enough for there to be no disputes. Then Hisham, he says to that man, then why have you come all the way from Syria to have a discussion with me about this difference? If it was enough, then you find that we wouldn't have a dispute. The man, he goes silent. Imam as-Sadiq, he says to him, that why have you gone silent? He replies by saying that if I say that the Quran and the Sunnah is enough, then we wouldn't be having a dispute. And if I say that it is not enough, then I have been proven wrong. You find that that man, he asks Hisham, oh Hisham, that who are the guides after Rasulullah? Hisham, he points towards Imam as-Sadiq. He says, this is that ocean. From all over the world, they come to learn from this man. Why don't you just talk to him? You find that that man, he talks to Imam as-Sadiq. Imam as-Sadiq says, didn't you leave from this town upon this day from the land of Syria? Didn't when you come up to me, wasn't there a question in your mind and you forgot that question? It is at that moment that man says that I have decided to become your followers. But look at the reality behind this. The reality was that before that man got to that point, he went through Hisham ibn al-Hakkam, that this is the value of the servants of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, that when you come towards this door, their servants, you begin to realize how magnanimous they are. You know, I remember somebody came to Imam Musa al-Qadim. They said, listen, I'm a sailor. At the time of night, there's many storms and they have problems. I have problems. Can you give me something? Can you give me a dua? The Imam Musa al-Qadim says, why Why are you coming to me? First go to Ma'ruf al-Qarqi, my servant. You know what? He comes to Ma'ruf. He says, oh Ma'ruf, that there are storms. I am a sailor. This is dangerous. Ma'ruf al-Qarqi says that tell that storm when the storm is going on, speak towards it and say that the servant of Musa al-Qadim, Ma'ruf al-Qarqi, is telling you to stop, and you'll see that it stops. That this is that status. And you find that Hisham, he was one who transcended the realms of companionship. This is why another incident, Hisham, he is debating. He is in the land of Basra. There's a famous scholar over there by the name of Abu Ubaid. He debates Abu Ubaid. He comes up to him. He asks Abu Ubaid the question that, do you have eyes? He says, what kind of a strange question is this? Do I have eyes? Hisham says, why don't you just answer the question? He says, yes, I have eyes. He says, what do you do with those eyes? He says, I see with those eyes. Then he says, do you have a nose? He says, yes, I have a nose. What do you do with it? He says, I smell with the nose. He said, do you have ears? He says, yes, I have ears. What do you do with them? He says, I hear with the ears. He says, do you have a tongue? What do you do with it? He replies by saying, I speak and I taste with the tongue. Then he asks him, do you have a heart? What do you do with it? He replies by saying that the heart is the center of the body. If the heart, it dies and it doesn't pump blood, then the rest of the body would begin to die. Then Hisham, he asks him, so the heart is, the rest of the organs are dependent upon the heart? He replies, yes. Hisham says, are you sure about that? He says, yes. He says, Hisham says that if Allah created a heart as the central part of your body and there was no heart, everything else would die, then why would he not have an imam as a guide, which would be the central point of this universe and the religion? Without him, people would fall apart into disputes and defections and defects. That you listen, you look, that this is wisdom, that when you debate, listen to the other individual, acknowledge them, speak with logic, and you find time and time again, Hisham, he did this, but one incident is famous within history, that you find that Yahya al-Barmakhi, he wanted to have a debate. Harun al-Rashid, he says, oh Yahya, have a debate. Between who? Between Hisham and a Khariji. Who are the Khariji, the Khawarij? You find the Khawarij are those individuals who, after the battle of Siffin, then when Imam Ali made the arbitration, Amir al-Mu'mineen didn't want to make the arbitration. They themselves forced Imam Ali to making an arbitration with one arbitrator from his side, Abu Musa al-Ashari, and one arbitrator from the side of Muawiyah. They forced him into it, but after that they blamed Imam Ali that why did you make an arbitration? That the irony, you force him into it, then you blame him for making that arbitration. You find that Hisham is having a debate with the Khawarij. He kills him in a few minutes. He says to that man, he says, okay, we're about to have a debate. But isn't it possible that during our debate, a point will come where we can't move forward, that there will be a point of difference, that there should be a judge over us? The man, he says, yes, you're right. The Khariji, he says, yes, there should be a judge. He says, Hisham says, okay, then how do we select the judge? He says, listen, you are a just man, I trust you. Hisham says, okay, I'm having difficulty because if I pick a judge from my side, it will be biased against you. And if I pick a judge from your side, it will be biased against me. If I pick a judge who is against both of us, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. It's our honor to have Mulana here for this Ashra Awwal. Inshallah, you all stay and benefit from his majlis in Urdu after this majlis as well. So you find that what was going on? You find that Hisham, he says, that if I pick an arbitrator who favors me, if there's a judge from my side, it will be unfair to you. If there's a judge from your side, it will be unfair to me. If there is a judge who opposes both of us, it will be unfair to the both of us. The man, he replies, yes. Hisham says, that isn't the only just reason that there is an arbitrator from my side and one arbitrator from your side. The man says, yes, that is just. Hisham, he looks at Yahya, he says, get him over here. This debate, it's over. This debate, it's over. Harun al-Rashid, he begins to think to himself that these individuals, they're only judging, they're only deciding the rules of the debate. What is Hisham talking about when he says the debate is over? And this is a manifestation of the verse. إِدْعُوا إِلَى سَبِيلِ رَبِّكَ بِالْحِكْمَةِ وَالْمَوْعِظَةِ الْحَسَنَةِ وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أحسن. That invite to the path of your Lord with wisdom and the way which is best. You find that Hisham says, that you weren't the Khawarij, the followers of Ali ibn Abi Talib, but after you yourself forced him into arbitration. But after the arbitration happened, where there was one person from the side of Ali, one person from the opposite side, you said that Ali made an unjust decision, that arbitration was unjust, thus you are turning away from him. Look at you right now. You just accepted one person to be a judge from my side, one person to be a judge from your side. Either you are accepting this condition and you can't blame Amir al-Mu'mineen, or you are weak in your judgment and you just did something which is unjust, and we can't accept from you if that's the case either. That this is wisdom. That is that level of wisdom that Hisham ibn al-Hakkam al-Kindi had. And this is why you find that there was one debate which became the end of Hisham. They come up to Hisham. They say, oh Hisham, who is greater? Who was more pious, Amir al-Mu'mineen or the first caliph? Hisham, he's in the court of Harun al-Rashid. He has asked this question. Hisham, he replies by saying that when you look within the verse of the cave, it says, which was of course on the night of Hijrat, when they were going from Makkah to Medina, it says, do not fear, God is with us. One of them said, do not fear, God is with us. That wasn't that individual you are mentioning. That what does it say? Doesn't God disapprove of his crying? That if he was crying, that if Allah was pleased with that crying, Rasulullah would not have stopped him. And if Allah was pleased with that crying, then there would be no problem. But you realize and you analyze the verse. When you look at the verse, what do you find? You find the fact that this was the case. Thus my master Ali ibn Abi Talib is more pious. Then he says after that, he says within our narrations it's mentioned that 4 people heaven will wait for. One of them is Ali, the other is Miqdad, the other is Ammar, the next is Abu Dhar. In your narrations it's mentioned Ali, Abu Durjana, Salman, Zubair. Ali is in both of them. At that point Harun al-Rashid says, who is this young man? Let's finish him off. That Harun al-Rashid says that I can't stand this young man. You find that Hisham ibn al-Hakkam, he leaves in fear, he dies of a heart illness. They say, oh Hisham, that why do you have this worry? Hisham mentions these circumstances. That when you look at Hisham ibn al-Hakkam al-Kindi, that when you sit over here, you sit with comfort. That this is comfort, that living within this country, when you have the chance to remember Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, use these opportunities, because blood has been shed for them to be remembered. There have been individuals like Hisham who sacrificed their lives, who spent their lives studying for this school of thought to be propagated. And this is why upon this night we are able to remember somebody like Ali Asghar, that 6-month child of Imam Hussein. You know, Ayatollah Kuchani Najafi, he wrote a book. In that book, he saw his hereafter in a dream. And he mentions that I had this guide across the entire journey, and that whenever I was in difficulty, whoever of the Ma'sumeen I had visited within my lifetime, they would come visit me. That I went to the grave of Hazrat Ali Akbar. Hazrat Ali Akbar came to assist me. But then when I was with him, I saw that there was this child, and there was this mark on the neck of that child. It looked like a very young child. I asked, who is that child? They say that child is Ali Asghar. I said that why is there a mark upon that child? He replies by saying this mark, it'll remain there until that time where Al-Mahdi avenges Karbala. You find it was the day of Ashura. The Imam, he is alone upon that day. He makes his famous calls. Ala min nasirin yansurna. Is there anyone to help me? When he makes this call, he hears that people are crying within the tents. He goes towards the tents. They say to him that when you made this call, Ali Asghari fell from this. Ali Asghar, he fell from that cradle. You find that the Imam, he says that I will take Asghar to the battlefield. But before Asghar was taken and the Imam asked for water, Rabab, she speaks to Ali Asghar. She says, Oh Asghar, I'm not from the household of Ahlul Bayt, oh Asghar. Oh Asghar, honor me in front of your grandmother Fatima. Oh Asghar, honor me in front of your grandmother Fatima. You know, there were 2 times on the day of Ashura where Imam al-Husaini remembered his Shia. The first was when he says to Imam al-Sajjad, Oh my son Sajjad, when you go to Medina, tell my Shia, whenever they drink cold water, remember me. Tell my Shia, when they hear the news of a Gharib, remember me. Tell my Shia, when they hear the news of a Mazloom, remember me. But the second time when the Imam, he remembered his Shia, he says, Oh my Shia, I wish you saw me on the day of Ashura and my hands were Ali Asghar. I was asking for water. In return I got an arrow. You find that the Imam, he begins speaking to the army of Umar bin Saad. He covers Ali Asghar as he comes out. Everybody is thinking that the Quran is in the hands of Imam al-Husayn. But in reality, you find this was the last chapter of that Quran al-Natiq. You find the Imam, he says that if I have done something wrong, this child is ma'soom. The Imam, he places Ali Asghar upon the ground. When he places Ali Asghar upon the ground, what does they do? Ali Asghar, he sticks his tongue out. The army of Umar bin Saad begins to cry. The Imam, he picks up Ali Asghar. He begins speaking again. Umar bin Saad says, Ikta kalam al-Husayn. Kill the words of Husayn. Hormala, he picks up an arrow. He puts it back down. He picks up an arrow. He puts it back down. Umar bin Saad says, Oh Hormala, if I had asked who is the most hard-hearted of my army, I would have replied it was you. Hormala says, Oh Umar bin Saad, you don't see what I see. Every time I want to fire this arrow, there is a lady dressed in black telling me my Asghar is She's telling me my Asghar is masoom. Hormala, he fires that arrow. It comes in. Udhunun ila udhun. It comes from one ear out the other. You find that the blood of Ali Asghar is in the hands of the Imam. He wants to throw it to the sky, but the call comes out. Oh Hussein, if this blood comes towards the sky, nothing will rain from the sky. He wants to throw it to the ground. The call comes. Oh Hussein, if you throw it to the ground, nothing will come from the ground. What does the Imam do? In his hands is the blood of Asghar. It is the plains of Karbala. He puts the blood of Ali Asghar upon his face. He says, on the day of judgment, this is how I will meet my mother Fatima. But you find that these Masaib, they aren't over. The Imam, he takes 7 steps back to the tent. He takes 7 steps back. He says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He goes, he buries Ali Asghar. But you know, when the time had come to collect the heads, the army of Umar bin Saad was counting the heads. They noticed that one head was missing. Somebody says, where is the head of the 6-month child